Well, howdy there, folks. James, Political Friar, coming to you again. A couple days off last week. Apologize about that. A new job has come around, and so my recording time and research time has been severely curtailed, but I'm going to keep this up as much as I can in the meantime. So, we've got or University of Oregon hat on, so we got a political topic today, and it's the one you expect. We've got a New Hampshire primary coming up, and there's been a ton of political news since we last talked. So let's start with the biggest story probably for the Republican primary, and that Ron DeSantis, at one point the sole challenger to Donald Trump in the polls, even in some polls in the spring, beating Donald Trump for goodness sakes, he dropped out. He dropped out because of natural consequences. He ran his campaign poorly. He spent a ton of money. The dude just mismanaged things. He also put all of his chips on Iowa Republicans, and thinking that Iowa Republicans were going to abandon the big guy was always dumb. It was never going to work. When the electorate in Iowa is literally 4% of the population, and that 4% is the most dedicated, hardcore right wing Republicans who are motivated by a personality to turn out, you're just not going to win. Frankly, I'm surprised he did as well as he did. The Iowa caucuses is not the place to unseat who is an effective incumbent. There are other places to do that, bluer places than that electorate. 4%. Can you believe 4% of the population is all that supported Donald Trump in Iowa? That just is wild to me. But that's the way the system works. Iowa goes first and has an outside influence. Those 4% of a population of a little less than 2 million is those Americans have more power than the rest of us. But another group of Americans who have more power than the rest of us live in New Hampshire. The way that the primary system works is it is a battle of momentum. You can have these small, sort of by the numbers, inconsequential victories, but they are signals to the rest of the electorate. See, most people in politics, voters, they're just not paying attention to politics. They keep their priors from the previous election and then they update them as the next election grows closer. And so the signals that the people in Iowa and New Hampshire give have outsized importance because they are going to be watched by all the folks who vote on Super Tuesday, South Carolina, and Nevada. And so they're a bit of a testing ground. They're a bit of a responsible population to give a signal to the broader electorate about, who's most fit to be the nominee for the major parties. And this has been, it's got ups and downs. It's got an upside in that a insurgent candidate like Barack Obama can run a relatively small local campaign and defeat a national candidate like Hillary Clinton. That would not have happened if we had a single primary day where all 50 states voted. And you had to have Barack Obama build momentum by winning Iowa, specifically in that case, and then continuing to build momentum as the calendar turned. It has a downside. It has a downside in that you really do have a very, very narrow subset of the national population having an outsized effect on who our leaders are. I mean, you've got an electorate in Iowa that is so white you don't even have a representative sample of non-whites in the Republican to even make any ideas about where that group of the population might actually vote. So you end up with potentially skewed results, maybe not. It's just it is that they have an outside impact on the momentum, and so into North or sorry, New Hampshire. Into New Hampshire we go. And into New Hampshire we go with just two candidates remaining. We've got Donald Trump, who is the prohibitive favorite, and Nikki Haley. And Nikki Haley has a trajectory which implies a degree of momentum. It's that you don't know whether she's going to be able to catch Donald Trump before he wraps everything up. I think probably not, but it's not a zero chance. So Nikki Haley's, path to the nomination looks a little bit like what we've seen, a reasonable showing in Iowa, which she can discount as non-representative for all the reasons we've just discussed, and then probably a win in New Hampshire. It's probably that. It's probably win or go home in New Hampshire. Well, it's go home any way you look at it, because the next state is South Carolina, and that's Nikki Haley's home state. There is some reason to believe that Nikki Haley might win in New Hampshire. See, the polls for the New Hampshire primary are notoriously wrong. And it's because of this very phenomena about momentum that we've talked about. There's only a week between the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary, and the Iowa caucus is a big poll shifting event. All the polls that you took from New Hampshire prior to the Iowa results, they're not worth as much. The Real Clear Politics poll showing that Donald Trump is ahead of Nikki Haley by double digits includes all kinds of polls that happened before Iowa. It also is based off of a likely voter electorate, which is really difficult to figure out in New Hampshire. See, in New Hampshire, if you are unaffiliated, you can choose which primary to vote in. And because there's not going to be a competitive Democratic primary, you can expect a lot of those unaffiliated voters to vote in the Republican primary. And a lot of those otherwise unaffiliated voters who are voting in the Republican primary, who maybe will vote for Joe Biden in the fall, have every reason to vote for Nikki Haley in the winter. And so trying to come up with a representative sample of likely voters is the pollster's nightmare. This type of open primary is notoriously impossible to guess at. Now, they do their best, and they have some models that get close, but if you are expecting a average polling error of the poll versus the actual results, to be a maximum of 3 or 4%, it could be more in New Hampshire. And that is basically what Nikki Haley is counting on. She's counting on a sizable chunk of Republicans to follow their governor, their popular governor, Sununu's recommendation, and a sizable chunk of the former Chris Christie supporters, Republicans, to come over to her instead of Donald Trump. And then she's counting on New Hampshire's electoral rules to get her over the finish line. This worked in the past. This worked for John McCain in 2008. It was New Hampshire. And that signaled to the rest of the country the direction that the Republican Party was going to go, and he got the nomination. That's the roadmap for success. And Nikki Haley's got enough money to pull it off, but she does need to win tomorrow. I think win is the requirement. Maybe if she's effectively tied, maybe, but South Carolina is the next place to go. I mean, Nevada, but Nevada's caucuses are pretty much wrapped up for Trump. They're also don't have the same historical impact that South Carolina does. So South Carolina is our home state. And the thing about home states is they're familiar. And the thing about familiarity is it breeds contempt. It's no surprise to me that in a state that has the kind of sharp-elbowed, rough-and-tumble politics with dirty tricks and nasty words that South Carolina has, that most of the Republican leadership in South Carolina has actually endorsed Donald Trump, who's not from there. Tim Scott, who is a senator who Nikki Haley literally appointed. She gave him his job. Yeah, he endorsed Donald Trump. It's a rough environment in South Carolina politics. So it's no surprise to me that Donald Trump has a little bit of the advantage in that, as much as they maybe wouldn't necessarily want a Florida man as their representative over a South Carolinian, they know Nikki Haley and they hate her. Not necessarily for good reasons, but just because of the type of combat that happens in South Carolina politics. And so Nikki Haley in South Carolina doesn't need to win. Even though it's her home state, she needs to just have a showing that was significantly better than Iowa. And then the money matters. Because the next big event is Super Tuesday, and that is when you have enough states voting that you can't run a local campaign anymore. It's got to be a near national campaign. And the national polls show Nikki Haley far behind Donald Trump. They actually show Donald Trump gaining some support over time. She's going to need to change the narrative. She's going to need to drop a big bomb. And that very well could be New Hampshire. We'll see. The other things that will benefit Nikki Haley if she hangs tough through the primaries will be all of Donald Trump's legal woes. He's going to start getting judgment after judgment after judgment after judgment against him. It's going to start with another couple $1 million from E. Jean Carroll. That's a given. He's going to lose his ability to do business in New York based off of the civil fraud trial up there. He's probably going to be required to pay a restitution in the in the $200 million range. I mean, he didn't do himself any favors by pissing the judge off. The judge is the fact finder, for goodness sakes. Why are you trying to piss that guy off? So Donald Trump's going to be taking some hits, inevitably. Maybe Nikki Haley can capitalize on them. There is a line that Nikki Haley has trotted out, and I think it's too late, but I also think it was the right line. She's been saying, you don't want to go back to the Trump-Biden years, do you? I think that's brilliant. I think you lump those two together. Those two have such negative connotation in the minds of the American voters. Both of them are hated. Lump them together. And hit him on his age. Donald Trump is going to be 78 years old on Inauguration Day. He is not, he's not showing as many signs of slowing down as Joe Biden, but he's no spring chicken. And he makes gaffes, such as calling Nancy Pelosi Nikki Haley over and over. And that type of gaffe is, it's distressing. And if Nikki Haley can lump those two together, say, listen, we just don't need a ridiculously old guy in charge of the country. Well, there's two ridiculously old guys as viable candidates and one 52-year-old. Pretty obvious choice, isn't it? Anyway, it's just a thought. Let me know how wrong I am in the comments down below. Leave me a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and just know that I really appreciate you. Thanks.